and thanks so much for coming to the Understanding Modular Assessments for grades 6 through 8, ELA. Just some general webinar logistics that I want to make sure to go over. First and foremost, thank you so much to the New Hampshire Department of Education. They are the reason that we're able to have these webinars and that you're able to come for free. They are the sponsor of this, so thank you so much. Just a heads up, everyone will be muted, so we can't hear you. Also, please ask questions. Annie and Kathleen will be taking a peek at the chat or at the Q&A. Chat goes to everybody, just so you know. Q&A will go specifically to a person and they'll feed me the questions here. If you are wondering, big question of the day is you will get an email tomorrow. It will include all of the slides and any of the supplemental documents that we are going through today. And it will also have that PD certificate. A little bit after that, the webinar for this particular session will be available, and it will be, the link will be shared with you as well. At the end of this, this is something that I have not been doing very well in my other webinars. I am going to get off the webinar relatively soon. What will happen is that when I close the webinar out, it will bring up a survey. If folks are hanging on and asking questions, know that the survey will also come in your email tomorrow. So please fill out the survey. We really value your feedback, and we take it into consideration as we do more and more webinars. This is the team we have here today. I'm Heather Jenkins. We also have Annie Wallace here from the New Hampshire Department of Education. Right.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming.
We also have Kathleen McCaffrey. She's here. She's our new hot off the presses English language arts education consultant. So we're excited to have her here today.
Thank you. It's so excited to be here. We do have one question about how long this will last today, Heather. So maybe you could answer that.
It should be about an hour. Yeah, we should be finished up by 4:15. Okay. All right. I'm going to actually turn my camera off so that you get as much screen as possible, and we'll continue to get started here. So this is a reminder just about in general with our classrooms, the goal of the reason and what we're doing for assessments is to improve student performance. It's not just to audit it. We're not giving assessments just to give assessments. We are figuring out where students are and what we can do to help improve their learning experience. For today, we are going to be answering the following questions. The first one is, why would we use the New Hampshire modular assessments? We're also going to be looking at some options for the modular assessments for your grade levels. And we're looking at the modular assessments in how you can better understand your grade level standards with looking at some of the questions and how things are worded on the portal. And we're also going to look at how you get to them and how you administer them. First and foremost, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page, I want to talk a little bit about the benefits and uses of the modular assessments. So some general information on this. First of all, they're short periodic assessments. They are not as long as a summative assessment. They're a little bit shorter. They also have the ability for you to see what students are scoring on a specific question. They all get the same questions. Summatives are a little bit harder that way in that you can see how they're doing overall on skills, but you don't know what the questions are. So since everybody's getting the same question, it makes you really be able to see where the student skills are at. All of the questions are based on the Common Core for both ELA and math, and then the science is based on the next generation science standards. Modular assessments are really, the way that they're designed is on those standard domains of either math or ELA, right? We're talking reading, literature, reading informational text, writing. So you're able to really match them up with what you're currently teaching within your classrooms. You can administer the modulars pretty much any time throughout the year. They were up and going and able for administration as soon as the students were entered in, and that should all be pretty much complete for most schools. I think probably by the end of this week, all the students will be in Tide because it will be your beginning of the year students that are uploaded into there. And then the modular assessments, the great thing about them is they can be administered at your current grade level. But if you have students who are not able to access your current grade level text or being able to read passages at your current grade level, you can administer them at a grade level that is appropriate for those students. I just want to let you know, it's not automatic that a student would get, let's say you're a 6th grade teacher and you wanted to give a 5th grade modular. You have to actually tell the system that you want that student to be able to see the 5th grade modulars, but know that it is possible. You just need to change some of the student settings in Tide for which assessments they have access to. So how they're going to help you as teachers or educators is they're going to help you measure student achievement, right? They're automatically scored and the results are almost immediate. And again, it is down to that question level. So you can see, oh, wow, this question 5 about key ideas and details, kids are really not understanding, or there is a common misconception of what the answer to this would be. So you're able to see that with the results. So they can help you evaluate if you use a specific program or whatever your scope and sequences or however you're teaching your class. It allows you to really see what the impact of your teaching is for students. They can also help you understand specific children's gaps, progress, needs, whatever they might need for additional instruction, maybe where they have skills that you didn't necessarily know that they had skills. So it's really, you can look at it right down to that student level. The modulars and the results from the modulars can also help you determine your resource needs. That means people and materials, right? So if you have students that are not getting a particular skill, maybe you need to get additional materials or additional ways of teaching that particular skill together in your classroom, or think outside of what you are already using for instruction. It also will help you determine if you have folks that are able to give students additional help, whether it be for remediation or for extension. It helps you figure out what they could be doing with those particular students. Again, it's all to help us inform our instruction. The big thing is also as you're looking at results for the modular assessments, it helps you understand maybe where you might be misunderstanding possibly a standard, or where you might be able to just change your teaching just a little bit to help kids really and make an impact on their learning and have them be able to show what they know. This is the biggest reason that I love the modulars, is that they help teachers gain an understanding of the standards, and not just the standards, but really the depth of knowledge that's needed for students to be successful with those standards and the skills associated with it. As for the student benefits, it's huge for students to be able to get an understanding and be on that testing portal. It gives them sort of an understanding of what the New Hampshire SAS assessments are about. So it takes away that if there's any misunderstanding of how to answer a question or how to navigate the system, you're getting through that with using the modulars. Because they're practicing right in that New Hampshire SAS system, it's taking away some of those barriers. Like I said, maybe they don't know that they can open the screen all the way up and see the passage all the way across the screen instead of scrolling down just on the left-hand side. Maybe there's questions that they're not used to, that it's a multi-select or a highlight. So we're taking away some of those barriers and having students really taking a peek at questions that are very similar to what they see at the end of the year, and really getting them to understand what to expect with that portal. There's no mystery when teachers are using the modular assessments, because they're understanding the standards better, because they are really informing their instruction, and because students have those barriers taken away. The New Hampshire SAS summative assessments show a higher level of proficiency. I want to make it really clear, like crystal clear, that we're not talking about teaching to the test. It is not about that at all. It is really just informing ourselves about what the standards are at our grade level, and how we can just make sure that students are transferring the skills from our classroom onto the New Hampshire SAS system, or any other area or any other assessment that they might be doing. This just happens to be one of them. So here's how the assessments can be used. They can be used as an end of unit assessment. They can be used as a pre-assessment for a unit. You can set them up as an assignment or a formative assessment on the portal, or you could use them as a summative assessment at the end of a unit to see how students have been doing. It can be used for all of those things. You can use the same modular for a pre-assessment, a formative, and a post-assessment, or a summative assessment. So the modulars can be administered more than one time. I really like this as well for those teachers who aren't necessarily ready to say, oh, I want to administer a modular and I want to be able to take a block of time to be able to use this as an assessment. Using the questions in the assessment viewing application and projecting them on your screen and walking through them with students are also really valuable ways to have students understand what the expectations are, and to look at some of those areas that might need a little bit different way of teaching. So if you put them up on your screen, walking it through with the students is really valuable as well. I wouldn't say this is necessarily just right before the summatives or for test prep, but just periodically throughout the year, having students be able to see what the system looks like is also super, super valuable. Any questions on that so far?
Nothing has come through yet.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on to what the options are for each one of the grade levels for ELA. So for sixth grade, the modular assessment categories or areas are editing, informational text, listening, and reading literature. And then the two types of writing are informative and argumentative. This is what the assessment viewing application looks like and where the modulars are. So you can see here for sixth grade, we've got a couple of editing, right? We've got 3 editing examples. So that's where students are taking a paragraph and editing specifically for vocabulary or content. And then the informational is informational, is reading informational text. And the literature is reading literature. Then underneath that, you can see the listening one as well. And the last ones are the writing. So this is where I want to just make sure you understand. For writing, it's informative writing. For reading, it's informational text. People get confused. So if you're giving these at a grade level, every once in a while, somebody will choose the wrong one, and all of a sudden students are doing a writing modular instead of a reading modular. So just make sure you know which one you're giving. And then the other type of writing is that argumentative. When it comes to the question breakdown, we had a lot of folks asking us, well, how many multiple choice questions are there? How many open questions are there? So we created this particular graph to be able to show you, depending on which modular we're talking about. If we're looking at reading informational text, modular A has 22 multiple choice and 6 open questions. Modular B has 22 and 6, and then modular C has 18 multiple choice and 2 open questions. So The modulars, while they're based off of very similar standards, they're not exactly apples to apples. So it's just good to have an understanding of the makeup of what the types of questions they are. The same thing with this graph here. So we put the standards for 6th grade across the top. And then for each modular, we have said how many questions there are related to that particular standard. So if you are really trying to hone in on skills on a specific standard, if you're looking at reading literature standard 4, and you know, I really need to be hitting this home and figuring out where are kids with this standard, well, then you might choose the informational reading passage, the informational text, modular A, because it's got 6 questions on that particular standard. So this is just a guide for you. For 7th grade, you've got the same categories here for your domains. So it's editing, informational text, listening, reading literature, and then you've got informative and argumentative writing as well. For your specific modular assessments, you've got 2 editing, you've got 3 informational text, you've got a couple of, or just, it looks like 1 listening, and then you've got a couple of reading literature. I'm not sure where these are 2 math ones that are mixed in. These shouldn't be in here. So in the assessment viewing application, you'll see just the ELA ones. Then writing, you have argumentative. We've got a couple of those writing and the informative writing. The question breakdown, again, this is just for your understanding to know which modular might have a little bit more multiple choice as compared to open questions. And then this is that standards breakdown. So the Common Core standards and how many questions for each particular modular. You've got very similar for 8th grade. You've got that editing, informational text, listening, reading literature, and then the same informative and argumentative writing. So this is what your modular assessment options are. You've got a couple of editing, you've got a couple of informational text, you've got a listening and a couple of reading literature. And then again, that same 2 argumentative writing samples and 2 informative. Here is the question breakdown for 8th grade ELA. You can see how many multiple choice or open. This is also helpful too with the writing, how many passages are associated with each one of those modular assessments. And then here is that breakdown for the number of questions that are associated with each standard. I also wanted to point you in the direction of, on the New Hampshire Department of Education website, there is a document that has to do with the middle school skills, standards, and competencies. This is just the example here for competency statements for foundational skills, foundational reading skills. It goes into all the different areas of reading and just literacy in general. This is just a screenshot. I will, this will be in the handouts that are available tomorrow so that you can scroll through. It's a pretty long document, and I think that it's something that you might be able to be using in your classrooms. Kate, you might be able to speak to this as well. I think this is something that you're probably going to be taking a peek at as well and just putting your eyes on for, you know, a fresh set of eyes. But for right now, this is what we have up on that Department of Education website.
Yes, we'll be looking at those. I don't see any questions at this point.
Okay, thanks so much. All right. Next thing is the grade level examples. So what we've done here is we have taken some of the questions that are modular questions. We have modified them a little bit. They are copywritten, so we can't show you the exact questions, but it's really helpful for you folks to be able to see what some of the questions are like and what's being asked of students. So We created these modular example documents that you'll have access to, like I said, in the handouts tomorrow. And then these are just some of the highlights or screenshots from those, just to have you understand how they are, what the types of questions are, and really what you might want to keep in mind. So for sixth grade, this is a reading literature example. And for reading literature, we put down some of the question themes that you might be getting for this particular type of modular. And then some of the asterisks here are just making sure that you know about the vocabulary, and this specific one, students need to be able to highlight and compare and contrast. So this is just a little bit about reading literature in one example. This one is reading informational text. Again, the question themes, and then some of those areas to be thinking about as you are teaching specific skills and ensuring that students understand how to answer some of these questions. Here's an editing example. So this is what I was saying, where they have a specific paragraph or paragraphs, and they're having to figure out what the grammar is and how it would make a little bit more sense, or if it needs to be edited. For speaking and listening, they will be given something that they are listening to, and then a series of questions that they will answer that is associated with that. This is an example of an informative writing passage. So here's what you sort of need to know. As the kids are looking on the left-hand side, they will be scrolling down. This is not the whole text. They will need to scroll down to be able to read the whole passage, and then they answer a series of questions that is related to that, that particular text or texts. All right, so this is an argumentative. This is just saying, basically giving them a information about what they might need to write about, and answering with the, it has a passage set that would have been on the left, just making sure that they're understanding how to provide the information here. One thing that I will say about writing and the modular assessments and the summative assessments is one of the biggest barriers that students have for writing on any of the New Hampshire SAS assessments is that, I know in middle school, you probably use a lot of computers anyway. But if you have students in your classroom that are used to using some sort of graphic organizer, or they're used to writing things out on paper first and doing some sort of mapping before they write, obviously you are not able to provide them with any sort of graphic organizer or a map for them to be able to follow. But it would be good for them to be able to at least have that paper, just like they do for math, to be able to put down some of their thoughts and create their own graphic organizers, and to be able to really just plan out what they're going to be writing that would be then able to have them transfer that on to typing on the computer. So it's just a thought for some of that writing information there. Seventh grade examples, we're going to go right through the same type of thing. So for seventh grade, here's a reading literature example, and then some just general things to keep in mind with reading literature for seventh grade. I'm going to kind of go through these because you are going to get these slides and the modular example documents tomorrow, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But again, this is a reading informational text. Again, what students are seeing, we try to choose questions that might be a little bit different than what students would be asked to do in a regular classroom. Here's an editing example. And then the speaking and listening, again, they're listening to something and answering multiple questions related. Here's an example of an informative writing prompt, and then here's the argumentative writing. Again, there's passages on the left, and then there being the question or the prompt is on the right-hand side. For 8th grade, here we go for reading literature. Things to keep in mind here. Here's the reading informational text. This part A and part B can definitely be something that trips folks up. Here's the editing example. Speaking and listening. You can see the types of questions that are being asked as well. And then here's an informative writing. And then here's the argumentative writing question or prompt. Questions just in general about the modulars and the examples that we had here?
There's one question coming out. Is there an easier way to get the answers than going in each time for each item?
There is no sort of, there's nothing that we have together that says, here's the correct answer. There's no answer key necessarily. The only time that you really do get the answers is after the students have taken the assessment, and you can go into the reporting portal and you can take a peek at which questions, what the question was. It has the related cluster of standards and the standard that is for each question and how the student scored, but there is no answer key.
I have another question coming in.
Mhm.
How soon will students get feedback or a score on the modular for the writing assessment?
It's almost immediate. It is a little bit different than the summative, because for the summative, you do the reading and then you do the writing and then you get the feedback after the writing. And sometimes it takes a little while because it ends up getting pulled or hand scored. It's also a really busy time of year where the system has thousands of students that are inputting information for the summative assessments. So it's pretty much immediate, if not the next day. There should be, as long as the students have submitted the assessment, the scores should be in there.
Heather, just an extension of the other problem in terms of the answers or having an answer key. That probably will not change from the way it is because they are secure test items.
Right. That's a little bit of why we weren't able to do exact screenshots as well, because with test security and copyright, we are not permitted to do that. Okay, anything else before moving on? We're good?
Right now we're good. I will let you know if there's more that come in.
Thank you so much. All right, so where in the world do you see these modulars? It's in the assessment viewing application. So I want to talk a little bit about that now. The ways to get into the assessment viewing application is, this is the link right here. If you type in NHSAS right into Google, it's the first thing that comes up as well. Is it brings you right into that Cambium portal. It looks like this. From here, the homepage, you'll want to click on test administration, or on the homepage as well, a little bit further down, there's a test administration box here. And then once you're on the test administration page, if you scroll down just a little bit, this preparing for test, here's where we're talking about the assessment viewing application. The assessment viewing application, you're required to have a secure login. So you need to be a teacher, at least within Tide, to be able to see the modular assessments. This is a new school year, so you also need to do the test administration certification. Every school year, you're required to do this particular training. And as soon as you do the training, it allows you to get into the assessment viewing application. It allows you to get into the reporting portal and test administration, but it will not allow you to get in there until you do this certification. So provided that you've done the certification, you click right on that, and then it will bring you to your secure login. On that page, you will use a drop down and it will allow you to choose a specific grade level. So this is where you'll be able to see 6, 7, and 8. And then it will, once you choose your particular grade level, this is grade 7, it will bring up the modular assessments for your grade level, if you just want to take a peek. Now, again, this is the assessment viewing application. You are not administering from here. This is just where you're able to go in and take a peek at the questions and get an understanding if this is maybe one of the assessments that you want to use, or if you want to take, if you're trying to give an informational text, you could go into all of the informational text modulars, and you could choose which one you felt like was maybe going to be, maybe the passages will on one of them is a little bit more interesting, you feel like, for your 7th graders than others. So this is where you're viewing those modulars. So you choose it and then it opens it up. So for the assessment viewing application, just know that's where you're able to scroll through all the questions, and that's where you're able to see them. If you want to administer an actual modular assessment, the way that you do that is, again, we're going to go right into that New Hampshire portal, cambiumask.com. So if you type in New Hampshire SAS, it's what shows up. And then from that homepage, again, you're hitting test administration, or you're scrolling down and choosing test administration on the page there. And as you scroll down a little bit further from the, preparing for test, there's this administering tests. If you click on this, you again have to log in. Reminder that you have to take that test certification course before you do this. And it will bring up a page that looks like this, where you're able to create a session to administer a modular. So this is where I want to go live into the portal. So I want to get right here. I'm going to test administration. And now I want to go to this administering test and this test administrator interface. I'm logging in. And so now I have 3 options for how I'm going to be able to administer a modular assessment. You have an active session, an upcoming session, and an at-home assignment. Active sessions are probably what most of you are used to. It's the way that the summatives are pretty much given. You click on active session. This is open. You say start new session. I just have to choose here, but you wouldn't get that. It brings you right to this screen here, and you're able to choose your content area. So here I would choose ELA. Now I have the option to choose whether I want to do an interim or a modular, or there's also Braille modular. So I'm going to choose modular. And here's the rule of thumb. If there's a plus symbol, use the plus symbol. If you don't, and you just click on grade 6, what will happen is it will give me every single modular assessment for grade 6, and I'm opening up a session, and the students could take any single one of these modulars. It's not totally what we want, so we want to clear all. We're going to hit the plus symbol here, and this is where I'm able to choose which modular I want to actually give my students. I'm giving an informational text. This here is a test reason. This becomes important if you have multiple teachers at your grade level giving a modular assessment, and you want to see the data all together in one place. That's the best way that I know of to be able to really look at modular assessment data is, here's our whole grade level as a whole, all of the students, where are their skills lacking, so that we can figure out as a collective how we can get the student skills where they need to be, or maybe it's where are they already doing well. So let's stop kind of teaching those particular skills and figure out where we might be able to go in a different direction, or with some other skills that are now able to be looked at because they've already secured what my assessment is looking at. This test reason, everybody needs to have the same test reason for it to show up in the same area of the reporting portal. So if you have somebody who chooses pre-test and everybody else chooses fall, then what will happen is all the students who have fall as their test reason will show up in one report, and then the person who chose pre-test will show up in another. It can be fixed later on, but all I would say is that if multiple teachers are giving it, then just let's agree on what we're going to use for a test reason. And then that way it will all show up together. So you can keep it unassigned here, and then you can just start your session. Here's what probably looks familiar to most of you if you've administered a summative. Here is that session ID that students will need. They need the same things to take a modular as they did for the summatives. They need their name, and they need their SSID, and they need this test session ID as well for them to be able to take a modular. Once students are starting to log in, you'll see this approvals over here, and you'll start being able to approve the students and get them into the assessment, and they'll be able to start taking it. If my class period is up and I need to finish this assessment, then I'm going to click stop session. It will say, are you sure? And you say yes. And then the session is complete. What this means is now every student who is taking that assessment is no longer able to take that assessment until I start a new session and they log in with a new session ID, and you kind of start the whole thing over. Just a heads up that if you pause a session for more than 20 minutes, it closes the session and you have to start a new one. Also, if you have students taking a modular assessment over multiple days, what you need to know is, let's say that today, one of my students out of the 25 questions got through question 15. They were on question 15 when we stopped the session. The next time that they get into that session, it will start them at question 16, and it will not allow them to answer any of, change their answers on any of the previous questions. That's just a test security thing. For writing modulars, whatever the student has thus far is saved. They just save it. And when they come in the next time, all of their writing should be saved in there, and then they can continue to write. So that's how you create a live session.
Heather, we have one question coming in.
Yeah.
What does test one, test two mean?
Test one, it's just different ways that you can, different indicators for your test reasons. Some people like to say the time of year. Some people use test one, test two. Those are static. They don't change. It's what Cambium has put in there. So you can't create your own test session reasons. So it's just what they have for options there. Okay. All right. The next way that you can create a session and to administer the modulars is with what's called an upcoming session. If I click upcoming session, it's the same thing. For here, though, I'm going to schedule a session. So maybe I want to create a session for next week. We're going to be doing a modular, and I just want to create it in advance. And for some people, they really like to create an upcoming session or schedule one because they're afraid they're going to administer the wrong one, and they want to be able to double check it. So, and it also allows you to choose a session timeframe for up to 2 weeks. And they use the same test session ID every time they go to do this particular modular. So some people really like that, where this test session ID doesn't change. So to schedule a session, you just click on this, and it will bring you to this area where you're able to choose the dates that you want to have this test session ID be good for, really. So let's say I wanted to start tomorrow, and I wanted to give myself a week for the students, depending on which sessions and classes I have. It's a holiday weekend, whatever. I have a week to be able to administer this modular, and I can click next. And again, this is where I'm choosing. Here's my subject area. I'm choosing modular. Again, use the plus symbol. I'm doing 6th grade, and maybe I'm doing in argumentative writing. This here, it's over here. I now need to I have to name my session, because if I don't name my session, I could have multiple sessions going, and I need to know which session I need to open up depending on maybe what my class is. So this one I'm just going to say is, I'm just going to say grade 6, and I'm going to say argumentative writing B. Now, again, this is that test reason. I can keep it unassigned if I want to. If I'm giving this more than once, you probably want to use a different test reason. And then that way it's really clear which session is which for my scoring. I'm going to save my session. And so now what's happened is this is giving my test session ID. I can copy it from here, but it's also, if I wanted to share this, it's right here anytime I want to see it. So now it's an upcoming session. It's not yet active because first of all, I'm not in it. And second of all, I'm not actually even in the test window. That starts tomorrow. So let's pretend now it's tomorrow. I'm just going to edit this and say we're here. So now, save. Now it's not in my upcoming sessions. It's now in my active sessions because I'm within the date window. The biggest misconception and problem that teachers have with creating an upcoming session and having it be open for all of these dates is that teachers often think that it's all, we're good to go. And I could just give my students the session ID and they'll be able to get in. And then what happens is your students go to log in and they say no assessments are available. And you're like, well, wait a second. No, I've got this. It's the argumentative writing B. Well, it's because you haven't joined it. So what needs to happen is you need to join it so then it becomes open for students to be able to get into that session. So now this is the familiar screen and I'm going to start seeing approvals in here. The only difference between having an actual active session and then a scheduled session is that each time I join it, this is the same code. So I don't have to create the session each time. I'm just joining an already created session. And some people just like the ease of that. But you could create an active session 6 different times and the students are still getting the same experience on their end and they're getting the questions. If for some reason, also, let's say that we're stopping for the day and I've closed this. This is still in my, where I go into my test administration, I still see this, sort of span of time. If I was past when this is actually open, this will go away. But if I still needed some students to finish up the assessment, I would just start another session with that argumentative writing B modular, and they'll still be able to continue what they were doing. So it doesn't go away just because my date frame is passed.
Okay, Heather, there's one question about can they pause so that the students can finish on another day?
Well, the pause, if it's over 20 minutes, will just stop the session. So they'll just create another session or open the session. Like I just closed that and that's done for the day. But if I have these same students in tomorrow, I just join it again and then they can get right back in again.
Right. They just can't go back and change the answers that they had done before unless it's a writing piece.
Yeah, right. Okay, the last way to administer the modular assessments is through what's called an at-home assignment. So if I click at-home assignment, this is the same sort of process. I have up to a 2-week time frame. I'm able to choose a specific modular. The difference with this is, even though it says at-home assignment, they can be sitting right in front of you and you can be giving the assessment. But the reason that teachers like this is because you don't need to approve students. This session, as soon as I create it, is open. Students could get in at any time and they can answer the questions at any time. But most of the time they're sitting right in front of you. But you could give it as a homework assignment as well and just know that the assessment has a little bit different level of validity, I guess, when you're giving it in your classrooms. It's just easier because as I create the assignment, I'm again able to choose up to a 2-week time frame. I'm just going for 2 days here. And I'm choosing ELA, choosing a modular. Let's go with 8th grade, and let's go with an editing modular. And so now I could do grade 8, editing B. Again, I just need to choose a test reason. I could say fall on this one, and I save the assignment. This here can go on a Google Classroom or Canvas or whatever you want to put in there. And what will happen is the students will click on that and it will automatically put this ID in, and then they just use their name and SSID and they're able to log in. If you find that students are in your classroom and they're doing this and they haven't finished and you're keeping this open and then they're going in and kind of messing with it later because it's on the Google Classroom, you can delete this session. And then you can open another session as an at-home assignment again the next day, and they can work on that same modular. So it's really flexible. People like it because you don't have to go in and approve students. They can be working on it at any time without you having to worry about the approval process. Any questions? You gonna say no?
I am not seeing any at this point in time.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. So let's talk reports now. Here we go. So when we're looking at the reports, these are the great things about the reports. Again, once your students have finished our modular assessment, the results are available. The reports are down to that question level, and they are associated with specific standards, which is great. And then that data, like we said earlier, it can be used to assess understanding, create groups for teaching, digging deeper into mastery for some students, and just for us being able to really evaluate what our instruction is and how we might be able to ensure that all students are getting what they need. For the reporting portal, going straight, this is a very common theme. We're going right to that portal again. We're choosing test administration again. And this time, underneath administering tests, you're seeing after testing, and you're going to go right into the reporting area. This is the new dashboard that you will see as you enter the new reporting portal, and then you would choose the benchmarks for ELA and math. Just so you know, for science, some of you might do both ELA and science. The science is technically under the interim, but it is that shorter assessment. The interim for ELA is really long. It is reading literature, reading informational text. It's a writing prompt. It's speaking and listening and editing. So you just want to make sure that you know the difference. The benchmark are the modulars. And you go to the dashboard, and this is what your dashboard will look like once you have some modular assessment data in there. You will only be able to see the students that you are rostered to. So if you are a teacher and you give a modular assessment and then you go into the reporting portal and it doesn't show you any data, it is because you do not have access to see student data. You have to be rostered. So rosters are created in Tide. They typically are your New Hampshire SAS test coordinator is the one that sets that up, or administrator. You need either a school administrative access or a district administrative access to be able to create the rosters. But that's the biggest issue that folks have with using the modulars is they don't have rosters, so they can't see the data. So you want to be rostered. So provided that you're rostered to your students, you would be able to click on whichever type of modular you would like. And then you would choose which modular it was, and it pops up with a screen that looks like this. So for ELA and math, they're very similar. At the top here, it will show you the 5 items the students perform the best on and the 5 items they perform the worst on, and then their total items. And then this is overall. I've cut the student names and that information off, but you get the idea of what you're able to see. If you wanted to know a particular question, you click all of these little blue numbers with the underline on them. They're hyperlinked. So you would open that up, it would show you the question, and then you could click on the tab that has the answer, and it will show you which particular cluster of standards and standard is associated with the question. You can also click through any of the student responses and see how students were answering a particular question. So for a particular student, you could see maybe where they were going wrong and what their actual answers were. If you're clicking up here and scrolling through, you can also see the number of students who got a certain number of points. These are all worth 1 point. Some are 2-point questions. So it does break down how many students got 1 point as opposed to 0 points, or 1 point or 2 point as well. If you export it and click on the print, this is what you'll get in Excel. It will give you the same information, the 5 items that did the best, the worst, your total items. It cuts off on the side. It goes way over to the right. I did cut the student names off here, but you can see all of the particular information about how students are scoring. The great thing about exporting it to Excel as well is that you're able to format it however you would like to format it. And you can get rid of columns that you think maybe you don't need, or what you really want to be able to see. I also like that it says which standard each particular question is associated with. Any questions there?
No, nothing at this point.
Okay. I do want to get into a little bit of the resources that are on the New Hampshire SAS portal. So again, we're going to the New Hampshire SAS portal, but we're looking at resources this time. There are hundreds of resources in here. We're just highlighting a couple of them. You've got some resources that I've already also downloaded into the folder that you'll have access to tomorrow as well. But one of the ways that you get in there is the reporting. And then there's also this resources button that's on the bottom of every one of these screens that you could click on as well. So here's what it looks like when you click on resources. So you're able to put in any sort of search criteria. You can look on the left-hand side. You can use the drop-down menu for which type of resource or grade level. You can type in keywords here. You could also, this is a drop-down that's similar to this here with the different categories that you're able to search off of. One of the most, I feel like, helpful resources that is on the portal is what are called performance level descriptors. Each grade level has performance level descriptors for ELA, math, and science. So what these are is they are basically a rubric that tells you what students are expected to do at a specific proficiency level. So here's an example. This just happens to be a math example for 3rd grade. All of the PLDs or standards are here. And then this is telling you what, for this standard, what a level 1 student or below proficient, what somebody's doing that's approaching somebody that's proficient or highly proficient. So here's the ELA example here. These are 4th grade, but they have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as well. And it's really helpful for you to start looking at, am I teaching maybe to an approaching proficient level? Maybe I am not teaching to a proficient or highly proficient level. So it's just another way to dive into those standards and think about where you are in your classroom and what you are looking at for a depth of knowledge or for how students are really understanding these skills. Also, there are vocabulary lists that are available. Again, I put this in the resources. This is the math vocabulary list. This is the ELA. This is 3rd grade, but it goes all the way up through 9th grade or through 8th grade. And then what this is this is all of the vocabulary that students will run into on the New Hampshire SAS assessments. It's really helpful for you to take a peek at this. I think for some teachers, it's surprising some of the terminology or some of the vocabulary that they see on the assessment. And so this is just an easy way to incorporate some of these words into your everyday teaching so that it doesn't become one of the reasons that they're not able to show their understanding. For you ELA teachers, there's also writing rubric examples. I have put the writing rubrics in there, and I've also put in the folder what the exemplars are. So for quite a long time, people have been wondering, as students are doing a writing assessment, for them to get a 4 on organization and purpose and a 4 on evidence and elaboration and a 2 on conventions, what does that look like? So it gives you examples for your grade level of what a perfect score would be, or what a 4.33 or 3.32, or and why they are scoring particular writing in a specific way. These writing rubrics also help you, but I feel like those exemplars will be really helpful for you to know what the expectations are for student writing. Another type of resource that you can find on the resources page is these tutorials for students. So here, for students and families, these are those item type tutorials where you're able to kind of take a look at specific things that students are going to be asked to do. What is an evidence based selected response, right? What does that mean? They can go through that and they can get a little tutorial on what's being asked of them on that portal. The student practice site, a lot of folks do this right before the summatives. They have the students practice on the practice site, but it's also just good for you to be able to see what types of questions students are being asked. So that practice site is also helpful for students to be able to take a peek at. Any questions about resources?
We have nothing in the
Nothing.
chat.